Welcome to Uncensored Conservatism. This is episode 218. So my wife often accuses me of only reading right-wing news outlets, but I really don't because I like to see what's up on the other side. For example, on the right, this guy's recent 25-hour speech on the floor of the Senate is being portrayed for what it is, a rehearsal for his 2028 presidential run. I mean, this guy will be remembered for being Spartacus and delivering a speech while basically filibustering nothing. But go to any leftist site, and Booker is the best thing since Martin Luther King. I mean, it's downright Spartacus-y. But I digress. And in fact, I often do read leftist sites like The Nation and The Atlantic and even Daily Kos for news. But back in September 2024, I came across an article in Salon written by this guy, Mike Lofgren, called The Far Right Actually Hates America. Its dark ideology has foreign roots. Ooh, sounds really ominous, but to get the point across, he even dressed Socrates in a MAGA hat, and I believe this article encapsulates the smug elitist projection so prevalent on the progressive left and why they're so hated these days. So let's just start. He says that since the days of Joseph McCarthy, Democrats and the left have had to bear the stigma of adhering to alien creeds, a suffocating European socialism, or maybe outright Marxism, Leninism. So let's just stop it right there. If the shoe fits, okay? Say what you want about McCarthy's tactics, but there was indeed a concerted effort by the communists to infiltrate key power centers in this country. Yeah, if you doubt me, we had this thing called the Venona Project, which identified communist spies like Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, Alger Hiss, Harry Dexter White, the second highest official in the Treasury Department, Lachlan Curry, very close aide to President Roosevelt, and Maurice Halperin in the OSS, which went on to become the CIA. So yeah, there were communists in the government then run by the Democrats. He then goes on to state that conservatives hold that every evil in modern America was a consequence of the left employing the cultural Marxist ideas of the Frankfurt School. That's not so much a accusation as a truth. Proof, they pretty much say it themselves through people like Saul Alinsky. And as an aside, he then parenthetically states that the idea of cultural Marxism is, quote unquote, one of the right's many anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. And we need to stop again because I'm only about 4 paragraphs into this thing. Now, it is true that most of the members of that Frankfurt School were in fact Jewish, and so what? By criticizing them does not make someone an anti-Semite conspiracy theorist. These people shown here are products of the leftist rot. So if I write an article critical of the psychoanalytic theory of Sigmund Freud, who happened to be a Jew, that doesn't make me anti-Semitic. The next quote: to the extent there is any truth to this caricature, it serves as a superficial explanation of the GOP's xenophobia and near-pathological parochialism. And that's a lot of words with a whole bunch of syllables to say that conservatives are basically stupid and nearsighted. And by the way, can we stop attaching phobia to everything? Phobia is a fear. No one fears immigrants any more than they fear a transgender. Well, then again, that is kind of fucking scary looking. Anyway, he followed this with, it dovetails with an anti-intellectualism, which I suppose he equates with intellectualism with this guy, or, maybe this, or maybe that. No one would no more expect Republican politician to speak a foreign language than to play the cello. So one is intellectual only if they can speak a foreign language. And only 3 types of people play the cello, and they are gay people, Asians, and gay Asians. And this total elitism sneering down his nose at all conservatives. But let's continue. He claims that there is a present-day Republican hostility to the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And once again, we have to stop because, ironically or not, it was Republicans who managed to get the Civil Rights Act passed. And if I remember correctly, it was this guy who was then a proud Democrat who tried to block it. As for hostility, no Republicans and conservatives treat civil rights differently than progressives, since we see minorities as individual people, not numbers. We also see them as people with agency, not a subset of the population that needs to be coddled. Anyway, he traces the genealogy of the alleged hostility to the Southern agrarians of the 1930s, to the post-Civil War Lost Cause movement, then back to the Civil War itself, and eventually back to this guy, John C. Calhoun. Now, I may be mistaken, but wasn't it Southern Democrats who were behind the Civil War? And wasn't it a Republican president who defeated the Confederacy? And wasn't it the Southern Democrats who migrated into the Ku Klux Klan and other white supremacist groups after the Civil War? And wasn't it Democrats who dominated Southern politics in the 1950s? Who caused the great migration north of their black population? That is, it purged the blacks. That is when Democrats weren't writing black codes, Jim Crow laws, and intimidating blacks at the end of a noose. This is classic projection and a historical revision, all rolled into one. But let's go on. We then find out that Republicans and conservatives have a hatred of industry, although I believe it was our Republican presidents who, by and large, ran the country during the Industrial Revolution. Cities? Well, it's not actually true. Just crime-ridden cities populated with homeless people run by Democrats is what we have a hostility toward. Public education? Not really, but certainly the underperforming public education institutions. And internal improvements or infrastructure. I mean, whatever on that one. It doesn't even deserve a response. We find out that conservatives have a distrust of cosmopolitanism, which, if he remains true to the classic definition, okay, no, we don't belong to some collective utopian world community. We have a distrust of sophistication and the new. Well, to the left, sophistication is layers of bureaucracy, and new is just spend more money on something. Other than spending more money on something, name one solution to any problem in America any Democrat has ever proposed that is new in the last, 30 years. Conservatives also allegedly worship tradition, and this may be true, since it is tradition and values that hold a society together. And above all, we have a fundamental distaste for equality, especially racial equality and gender and class equality. And this is a really stupid statement by Lofgren. Conservatives don't have a distaste for equality, but we do have a distaste for equity. Years and years of the ultimate example of equity, affirmative action, has not created their mythical equality. So, take that and shove it up your ass. As for gender, Mr. Lofgren's side can't even define what a woman is unless you so stretch the definition that you end up with a bunch of dyed-haired freaks. He then gets into a screed about someone called Joseph de Maistre, some French dude that probably very few conservatives have ever heard of, let alone be influenced by. He makes sure to remind us that this guy was a Catholic and influences such Catholic conservatives as Patrick Deneen, shown here. Again, another person few conservatives ever heard of. And then, although he does mention that Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito are Maistre's political marionettes. Now, I assume because that French dude, Deneen, Alito, and Thomas are all Catholic, that is the reason he says this. And, conservatives are anti-Semitic. Maybe Loughran's just being anti-Catholic here. I don't know. Maybe he's a member of the Klan also. He claims that running through conservatives is a creepy fascination with violence. Uh, Surely he can't be referring to this, a mostly peaceful George Floyd riot, or, those 1960s race riots, or, this, Antifa people in Portland. Oh, maybe he means this, I don't know. The Charlottesville, which was instigated by Antifa. He claims that conservatives are anti-scientific, and by that I assume we should all just jump on the Fauci bandwagon and listen to our bureaucratic betters and get our asses vaccinated. Drink the climate change Kool-Aid. Oh, conservatives also have a preoccupation with greed, which to Loughran is capitalism. Then, summoning his best Hannah Nicole Jones, he harkens back to 1619 to prove that American conservatism is based on greed and the theft of labor through slavery. Who knew that, the founders of this country were Republicans and conservatives? Then there's a mishmash of crap about Friedrich Hayek and Ludwig von Mises, and reminds us that Mises was an advisor to a fascist in Austria in the 1930s because if you were an economist in Austria in 1932, well, then you must just be a fascist. And what's screed against conservatives would be complete without attacking Ayn Rand, who just happened to live under what I guess is Loughran's preferred alternative for the progressive left, socialism or communism. And she probably knew a thing or two more than Loughran can ever hope to know. So getting to the present day and the funny part, he says that everyone knows that Trump admires Putin and many conservatives follow in a slavish manner. Now, if Loughran would get out of his progressive bubble, he learned that as concerns Ukraine and Putin, there's certainly a vibrant discussion among conservatives. And if I remember correctly, it was this guy who did squat when Putin annexed Crimea. And it was this guy who did little when Russia actually invaded Ukraine. He also let the rest of Europe become dependent on Russian energy by endorsing the Nord Stream pipeline. So if any side is slavish, it's the progressive left being slaves to Zelensky and Ukraine, who pin their social media with little Ukrainian flags and then wave them in public. He makes the incredible claim that some elements of conservatism are fueled by, get this, Silicon Valley, because he has to get his dig in against J.D. Vance. No one, not even Mark Zuckerberg, would ever mistake Silicon Valley for a bastion of conservatism. He then says that conservatives and Republicans are profoundly, I tell you, alienated from the real America of today. All right, this is just like classic leftist projection. You see, most Americans, according to Loughran, want to quietly lead their lives and dream their own private dreams by waking up one day with a penis and thinking you're a woman, then having this shoved down the throats of Americans as something normal, not a mental problem, which it really is. Or that a woman can kill a baby in her room, real women that is, because it interferes with her career or her private dream. So here's the skinny on this article. Loughran argues from an elitist perspective full of polysyllabic words, rewrites or ignores certain historical facts, links every conservative to alleged what he calls fascist economists, while throwing out ad hominem barbs against people like Vance, Trump, Alito, Thomas, and Trump. It's actually his side that has fucked up this country. It's his side that has ignored the impending insolvency of things like Social Security. And it's his side that has forced weird gender ideology on America and sacrificed meritocracy on the altar of equity. Are there weirdos on the right? Absolutely, but don't tell me they ain't on the left also. Mr. Loughran, heal thyself before you spew your pseudo-intellectual nonsense on the pages of Salon. You're preaching to a choir that's losing members monthly. And that's about it. Thank you. Have a great day. More pleasant tomorrow.